before we go to the candidates ask candidates. Yes.
My name is Garrett Ian. I live here in Keene, and I produce a television series called AKPF #1 for CheshireTV. So I've been living in Keene about a year, and the city of Keene made global headlines when they sued myself and 5 of my friends for filling parking meters downtown. Now, I believe the city council didn't have much oversight as to what the legal department of the city was doing, what they choose to do, because the city council probably has its hands full with a lot of other city business. However, spending is something that was heavily talked about here, and the city is increasingly spending more money on lawyers for this case trying to save it, because it is so baseless that they just need so much help to support it. I'm wondering if, as candidates for the city council, that you would take any steps to curtail the authority of particular individuals in the city, perhaps the city attorney or the city manager, in making decisions to spend so much money on frivolous legal matters.
Well, I don't know if I have a conflict of interest in answering this question. I'm one of the people who is being sued along with you, Garrett, and so I think that clearly that's a huge waste of money. Their second lawsuit that they just filed earlier this week is an attempt to extract money from the people who are more commonly known as Robin Hooders. For those that are unaware, Robin Hooder is one who places coins in meters before a parking enforcer can reach the meter. There's been a lot of misinformation being spread about the Robin Hooders, mainly that there's harassment and intimidation going on. I've never involved myself in anything like that, and I've never seen any Robin Hooder do anything like that. So I think that lies are being told, misinformation is being spread, and it's costing the Keene taxpayers who knows how much money because they've hired private attorneys to take this case. Those private attorneys are probably charging hundreds of dollars per hour for their services. And ultimately, I agree with Garrett that the lawsuits are going to fail and the taxpayers are going to be stuck with the bill because what the Robin Hooders are doing is not only legal, but it's also protected by the New Hampshire Constitution. So I think that the Parking Enforcement Department needs to be shut down. I think that would help things. And I'd be interested in hearing proposals as to how to curtail the city attorney's powers that he has.
As being the only city councilor right now, I've had privilege to legal legal advice or legal updates on this whole thing. And because I'm a city council and it was privileged information, I cannot and will not say anything about it. If it came, once everything was settled, then I'd be free to talk about it. But right now, legally, I could not talk about it.
You know, this is something that I don't know a lot about. I've seen some things. I try not to read the Keene Sentinel. You know, I hear things on the street and whatnot, but, and I've seen, Garrett, I've seen you and some of the folks running around. I've seen people put signs up in their car saying, don't fill my meter. You know, I don't know. I mean, the point that I made earlier was that I think that the city of Keene, it most likely costs us more money to enforce parking than the money that we derive from it. Now, I don't know the solution. I don't know what it is that you're trying to accomplish, but you know, the fact is the city started looking at putting in the parking kiosks. I think that solves the problem. It saves you money having to fill meters. If you want to give people free parking, then you know, maybe approach the city and see if you can buy some parking spaces from them, or even parking passes that you can give to people. But the matter is the city owns the property. They are, by, I guess, caveat, offering to lease that space for your any personal vehicle or for any reason you want to use that space for a limited period of time. How that's paid for, Garrett, if you want to donate it, great, you know. But the fact is that it costs us a lot of money to enforce. I think there are alternatives we should be looking at. I don't suggest outright of just outsourcing this, but I do think we ought to look at all the options on the table as to how we lower the cost of managing parking and providing accessible parking in this city.
Thank you. We will now go to the official candidates ask candidates session or section. Mr. Sutherland, you have already asked one question.
But it was of somebody who's left, so I still have questions, right?
Right, you still have 2 questions remaining,
okay.
But since you've already asked one, let Councilor Roberts have the first question of this segment. Councilor Roberts, do you have any questions for the two opponents of yours that are here?
The Keene State College has been expanding for a long period of time. Keene State College students resulted in a lot of citizens and families moving outside of Keene because their housing was so important. But the research shows that the current way of college, 18 to 22, is fading drastically. And so as a result, you've seen over the last couple of years, there's more and more vacant spaces in Keene. And as you get more vacant spaces in Keene, property values are dropping. So what would you do with a lot of the areas in Keene that are basically really being vacated and we don't want them to be a blighted area? What would you look at possibly doing in the future to prevent that from happening?
Asking both of us? Yeah. Okay.
Who wants to go first?
Well, clearly the disincentive to live in Keene is the property taxes. So if property taxes were lowered, more people would have an incentive to live here, meaning there'd be less likely for properties to go vacant. And we really have a problem with that now, and it's only going to get worse. Keene hopefully will not end up looking like Berlin, where all kinds of properties are on the market and they cost next to nothing. It's almost like the Detroit of New Hampshire. So Keene's going that direction. The question is, what will the council do about it? Existing indicators suggest nothing at all. They're going to keep increasing the budgets. They're going to keep increasing the amount that they're spending, and right off into the sunset as far as they're concerned, because there's no accountability for the councilors. If the councilors, through their inaction or whatever, or their actions, if they end up, hurting the economy of Keene, it'll hurt them, from that aspect, but there's no direct accountability, there's no responsibility for the things that they do. So if we were to switch, hopefully when, we switch to a voluntary method of funding for the city, that would completely change their incentives, because then they actually have to make people happy in order for them to get money out of them, just like the rest of us in business have to.
I don't have an answer for, just to boil down your question, trying to figure out how do we deal with Keene State College and the impact on the environment. I mean, I went to college, not at Keene State College, but I went to college in a city that was a very beautiful city, and they also had concerns about the college kids, and it's just a matter of fact. It's here, deal with it. The fact is that the school continues to build out. I don't know whether the college has indicated how much more growth they anticipate over the number of years, but they continue to take properties off the tax rolls. I know this is a big concern for the city of Keene, but the city of Keene continues to take property off the tax rolls as well. So, look in the mirror. We need to focus on the 93 buildings that the city of Keene currently owns, and looking at getting rid of some of those, looking at some of the properties, getting rid of some of those, working with Keene State College to understand what their growth desires are, and how to manage that effectively, and understand the implications of taking more property off the tax rolls. But if we had a clear and concise plan to cut spending and to lower taxes, as Ian had mentioned, I think that would change a lot of things. It would increase property values. It would be more expensive for Keene State College to acquire property, and that would probably be the best way to stop it.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman, you now have the opportunity to ask your opponents a question.
I have, my first question is just for you, Kris. You had talked earlier about how the city council wasn't authorized, as Bob had suggested, to do internet collections, I guess. That the state hadn't authorized that, so therefore, it's not within the city's purview to do that kind of thing. How is it then that the city just recently passed, by a 15-0 vote, a ban, a prohibition on synthetic drugs?
It'll go the same way. I think probably about 7 or 8 years ago, the city passed a ban on smoking in restaurants. And what happened was certain people said, you know what, this is not authorized under state constitution. And what they did was they appealed to the state, and the state said, sorry, you can't do this. So just because the city passed an ordinance 15-0, if no one appeals it, it stays in effect. Anybody who wants to appeal it to the state saying it's unconstitutional, the state would then take action. In all likelihood, unless the law is changed, the state would turn around and say, Keene, your ordinance is illegal, and the ordinance would be struck down.
Who would like to ask the next question of their two opponents that are here?
Yeah, so my question is going to come after I just have a clarification. So the online payment systems, you said the state was not going to authorize the city to collect electronic payments?
Yeah, the state has not done that yet. There's been a numerous times because people want to do it. People want to be able to pay their taxes on debit.
So the city of Keene has been doing, or the city of Portsmouth has been doing this for at least 3 years. When I notified you, the city council, that this was ongoing, in their first year, they collected over 5,000 payments. So 5,000, I mean, how many days open is the city offices, not including all the half days that they walk away in the summertime, but perhaps 240 days a year. That's a lot of transactions that could be avoided, having people come and waste gas to go to City Hall to pay. So there are third-party systems. There are quite a few out there.
Yep.
They have security.
Yep.
And so why is the city avoiding engaging with that instead of trying to invent the wheel?
With this, okay, Portsmouth, again,
Let them have the microphone, please.
Sorry.
again, on certain things, certain cities and towns do things, and if people don't complain, they're allowed to continue on doing it. Yes, here in Keene, we've looked at a couple of times at different people to third parties. And right now, the cost on the third parties are quite high. And what we need to do is we need to get a competitive bid, and we need to get the cost down. We need to be able to do the transaction online. And it's going to happen. I wish it had already happened, but it's going to happen sooner than later, because we had one individual who says, I want to pay online because they're paying $12,000 to $15,000, and I want to pay online so I can get the mileage. So people, so they can take trips every 2 years. But people want it to happen, and it's going to happen. Like I said, it should have already happened, but it hasn't happened, but it's going to happen.
Councilor Roberts, you can now ask a question of Mr. Sutherland and Mr. Freeman.